man in the tattered coat stood motionless in front of the counter, his hands trembling as he counted crumpled dollar bills, as if each one carried the weight of his remaining dignity. Behind him, customers shifted impatiently, muttering under their breath and inching forward. But the cashier, a young woman with a gentle smile, didn't rush him. She leaned in slightly, her voice soft, as if she were shielding something fragile. "It's okay, sir," she whispered, quietly sliding a few bills from her own pocket into the register. "You deserve a warm meal." At the end of the line stood Leon Reed, quietly observing. Dressed in a faded hoodie and worn-out jeans, no one would have guessed he was the heir to a fast food chain with 13 locations, passed down from his late father. He wasn't here for sales numbers or financial audits. No. The growing number of complaints, the constant employee turnover, and the way managers seemed to dismiss problems as minor inconveniences, all of it had pulled him out of his office and into the real world. The spreadsheets and sanitized reports had stopped meaning anything. He needed to see the truth with his own eyes. What he didn't expect on his very first visit was to witness something that would pull at his heart so deeply. The homeless man clutched the warm burger and fries like they were treasure. "Thank you," he rasped, voice cracked from cold and hunger. The name tag on the young woman's uniform read Lena Harlo. She gave him a soft smile, one that felt like morning light after a long, bitter night. "Take care of yourself, okay?" she said. Leon studied her face. She looked like she was in her mid-20s, eyes tired from long shifts but filled with a warmth that couldn't be faked. Her kindness didn't come from pity. It came from something deeper, more human. A sense of decency that didn't need to be justified. But the moment of grace shattered seconds later. A man stomped over, his steps heavy, cutting through the quiet like a blade. His name tag read Greg. His voice was low, sharp, like a reprimand held on a tight leash. "You paid for him again, didn't you?" Lena didn't flinch. She stood straight, her fingers tightening slightly around her apron. "He's always polite. I used my own money." Greg's jaw tensed. "This isn't a charity. If corporate finds out you're giving away food, they'll—" "I paid for it myself," Lena interrupted, her voice firm. But her eyes dropped, not out of fear, out of exhaustion. Exhaustion from constantly having to explain that kindness should never need approval. Greg's eyes narrowed. "That's not the point. You're setting a precedent. What happens when more of them start showing up expecting a free handout?" Leon clenched his fists at his sides. Every word Greg spat out twisted like a blade in his chest. If a manager was willing to crush even the smallest act of compassion, what else was happening behind closed doors? Leon stepped forward, still playing the role of a regular customer. "Is there a problem?" he asked casually, as if he'd only just noticed the tension. Greg turned to him, cold and dismissive. "This has nothing to do with you." Leon shrugged, his eyes never leaving Lena. "She paid for it herself. Doesn't seem like a big deal." Greg let out a scoff. "You don't get it. It's about principle. This is a business, not an emotional support group." Lena stood silent now, but Leon saw the way her hands trembled. It wasn't fear. It was that sinking feeling, that ache when you realize the people above you care more about policies than people. Leon gave her a quiet nod, one only she could see. "You okay?" he asked gently. She hesitated a beat, then nodded. "Yeah, thanks." Leon walked away, but he didn't stop watching. His curiosity had turned into concern, and now into resolve. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. He took a seat near the back, ordered a small meal, and kept his eyes on the register. He wanted to see what the day looked like when no one thought they were being watched. What he saw next weighed heavily on him. Greg walked around barking orders like a commander, but he barely lifted a finger. He berated his staff constantly but offered no help. When the fryer malfunctioned, he ordered a teenage kitchen worker to figure it out. When a customer complained that their fries were cold, Greg rolled his eyes and muttered, "Some people just love to whine," tossing the blame toward Lena. Leon could feel the muscles in his jaw tighten. This wasn't just about one free meal, this was about rot. The kind that starts small but spreads quickly, silently poisoning the heart of an entire workplace culture. And right now, that culture was broken. Meanwhile, Lena and the rest of the crew kept moving. She took orders, wiped tables, and even crouched down to fix the fryer when no one else had a clue. There she was, alone in the chaos, steady, uncomplaining, doing the work of 3 people. She didn't wear a cape. She didn't ask for recognition. She simply chose, again and again, to care. In a place that had forgotten how, Leon watched her, his thoughts no longer clouded by doubt. This wasn't about a single act of kindness. This was a test of values, of leadership, or more accurately, the devastating absence of it. And tomorrow morning, Greg would learn exactly who he had dismissed so casually. Leon returned the next day, dressed just as plainly as before. The same faded hoodie, the same scuffed sneakers, the same jeans worn thin at the knees. But this time, he wasn't just there to watch. He was there to walk in their shoes. He applied for a job on the spot, saying he'd just moved to the area and was looking for work. Cal, the wiry assistant manager who seemed permanently in a hurry, barely looked at the hastily filled application. "We need bodies. You can start now," Cal muttered, tossing Leon a uniform polo that smelled faintly of old grease and burnt oil. The training, if you could even call it that, was a joke. Cal pointed vaguely at the register and gave rushed instructions before disappearing to handle some other chaos. Leon stumbled through his first few transactions, fumbling with buttons and codes. Thankfully, Lena was on the same shift. She stayed close, gently correcting his mistakes in between taking orders herself. "Don't worry," she whispered when she could. "They just throw people into it here. You'll pick it up." Leon nodded like a nervous new hire, but inside he was tracking everything. Every broken process, every shortcut taken, every quiet moment when workers carried more than their fair share. And what he saw was worse than he feared. Leon smiled and nodded like any nervous newcomer trying to fit in. But behind his calm exterior, his mind was a steel trap, recording every detail. The understaffed kitchen, the fryer coated in layers of old grease that hadn't been cleaned properly in days, the strained movements of employees like they were holding their breath, waiting for something, anything, to break. About an hour into the shift, Greg stormed in. From the moment he entered, his voice echoed across the restaurant, barking orders like a drill sergeant. His mere presence brought a chill to the air. Employees visibly stiffened at the sound of his voice. "Lena, drive through Kelb, stock the freezer. You," he growled, glaring at Leon, "clean the dining area. Keep an eye out for people loitering. We don't run a soup kitchen here." Leon didn't respond. He just gave a quiet nod, grabbed a rag, and started wiping tables. But his eyes never left Greg, and it didn't take long for more cracks in the foundation to reveal themselves. A delivery truck pulled up outside. Greg ignored it completely, letting the driver wait and stew. Only when the man began visibly expressing his frustration did Greg sigh, mutter, "Not my job," and wave Cal out to handle it. Back in the kitchen, a young worker yelped in pain after accidentally burning his hand on the fryer. Face contorted in agony, the boy asked Greg if he could step away to rinse the burn. Greg didn't even glance up from his phone. "Put a glove on and get back to work," he said flatly. Leon stood frozen, jaw tight. He had run businesses, he had seen all kinds of managers, but this level of callous disregard, Treating people like tools rather than humans was something he couldn't and wouldn't forgive. Later, during the mid-shift lull, a woman walked in with 2 young children and placed a large order. Lena handled it quickly, efficiently, and with her usual warmth. But as she turned to grab their drinks, Greg swooped in. "You forgot to charge for the extra sauce," he snapped. Lena glanced at the receipt. "It's just 25 cents, I thought." "You thought?" Greg cut her off sharply. "That's the problem. You act like we're running a damn shelter." Lena clenched her hands, but kept her voice level. "It's just 25 cents. Exactly why you're stuck behind the counter and not running the place." That was it. Leon couldn't stay quiet any longer. "That was unnecessary," he said, voice calm but cutting through the tension like a blade. Greg turned, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. "Stay out of it. You're just the new guy." Leon didn't back down. "She's doing her job and she's doing it well. A little respect wouldn't hurt." Greg sneered. "If you want to keep this job, maybe shut your mouth and learn how things work." Leon met his stare, unwavering. "And I'm saying, if you knew how to lead with respect instead of fear, maybe people wouldn't be working in this kind of tension." Greg paused, caught off guard. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Lena turned to Leon, her eyes a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," Leon said simply. "I did." For the rest of the shift, Greg remained silent, brooding in the background. Leon didn't care. He had seen enough. He had what he came for. That night, Leon called corporate HR. He requested full internal reports. Employee complaints, customer feedback, anything tied to that store. And what he found didn't surprise him. This location was a microcosm of a bigger disease: poor leadership, high turnover, toxic management culture. Greg wasn't the only problem. He was just the most visible symptom. The next morning, Leon returned, no longer in his faded hoodie or scuffed sneakers. Today, he wore a crisp white shirt and a tailored gray blazer. Today, he wasn't here to watch. He was here to act. Inside, employees were preparing to open. Their movements were slow, worn down from yet another grueling night. Lena was behind the counter, eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep as she tried to boot up the register system. When she looked up and saw Leon, something flickered in her expression. Confusion, maybe even a little hope. Greg appeared from the back, clearly annoyed by the disturbance. He scowled. "Can I help you?" His voice was cold, dismissive as ever. Leon stepped forward, expression calm but firm. "Actually, yes, you can." Greg folded his arms, scoffing. "If this is about yesterday, save it. You're a temp." Leon smiled slightly, his eyes sharp like the calm before a storm. "Right," Greg said with a raised eyebrow. "If you're here for another shift, talk to Calb." Leon didn't answer right away. He let the silence stretch long enough for the air to thicken. Then, his voice steady and resolute, he said, "I'm not here for a shift, Greg. I'm here as the owner of this company." The room fell deathly still. Lena froze mid-keystroke. Calb, walking in from the back, stopped in his tracks. A few employees peeked out from the kitchen, sensing something big was about to happen. Greg just stared, blank for a moment before a forced laugh escaped his lips. "You're joking." Leon didn't blink. He pulled out his company ID and set it on the counter. The name read clearly, Leon Reed, CEO. Greg's smirk vanished. His body stiffened like a pulled wire about to snap. "All right," he muttered. "Let's talk in the back." Leon shook his head. "No. We're doing this here, in front of everyone. They deserve to hear it." The silence deepened. Every eye in the room locked on them. Greg was no longer the one in control. Lena turned to Lena, his tone softening. "I watched you yesterday. You did the right thing. even when it wasn't easy. That tells me more about your character than any file ever could. He looked around at the team. I saw people covering for each other, stepping up when management failed them. Then his gaze landed squarely on Greg, voice sharpening. And I saw a manager who did the exact opposite. Greg straightened up, defensive. I run this store by the book. Leon cut him off. You don't run anything. You pass off problems instead of solving them. You ignore safety risks. You belittle your employees instead of leading them. That's not running a store. That's running it into the ground. A flash of panic crossed Greg's face before he masked it again. Only saw one shift. I saw enough, and the complaints I reviewed last night confirmed it all. Greg opened his mouth, then closed it. The usual arrogance had drained from his features. I've been here 3 years. I know how things work. And that's exactly the problem, Leon said. You've been here long enough to know better, but instead of making it better, you made it worse. Greg's face flushed. He looked around the room, searching for someone, anyone, to back him up. But no one spoke. No one even looked his way. I was just enforcing company policy. If you don't like it, maybe you should change your own rules. You're right, Leon said. Policies matter, and one of ours is that managers lead with respect. Another is that employee well-being is non-negotiable. You've broken both. Greg's hand clenched at his side. So what now? Leon's answer came without hesitation. You're fired, effective immediately. Greg blinked. You can't. I can, Leon replied, and I just did. Greg stood frozen for a moment, then slowly looked around the room. But no one stood with him. Some employees gave small, almost imperceptible nods. Others simply stayed silent, but not one of them looked surprised. With a frustrated breath, Greg yanked the keys from his belt and slammed them onto the counter. Then he turned and walked out. The door swung shut behind him with a final heavy thud, like it was closing a toxic chapter in the store's history. No one moved. Then, behind the counter, Lena exhaled. A long, slow breath, as if a heavy burden had finally lifted off her chest. Leon turned to face the team. His voice was calm, deep, and full of promise. Starting today, everything changes. A low murmur rippled across the room. Cal, still processing what had just happened, hesitated before speaking. What kind of changes? Leon met each of their eyes, one by one, his gaze steady and sincere. We're fixing everything that's been broken. More staff, real training, and managers who actually care about the people they work with. He looked at Lena. People who go out of their way for customers won't be reprimanded. They'll be recognized. Lena looked stunned, her lips parting slightly, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Leon continued, I want to hear from all of you what's been missing, what needs to change, because this company only works when the people who run it feel respected, supported, and heard. There was a beat of silence. Then Lena, voice quiet but clear, asked, You mean you really want to know what we think? Leon gave a small nod. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. The atmosphere in the room began to shift. The tension didn't disappear, but something else crept in, a cautious, delicate kind of hope. The kind people hold on to with both hands after too many letdowns. Lena looked at Cal, then at her co-workers. Finally, she turned back to Leon. For the first time that morning, she smiled. And just like that, the real change began. Leon stayed at the restaurant for hours afterward, not to oversee, but to work alongside them. Together they reviewed the schedule, discussed how to improve operations, and put new feedback systems in place. By lunchtime, the air in the restaurant felt different, lighter, calmer. The pressure that used to hang like a storm cloud had lifted. Lena stepped into her new role with ease, like it was always meant for her. Cal, no longer forced to carry the weight alone, moved more confidently. Even the quieter employees began to open up. And then, the door opened again. This time, with a familiar face. It was the homeless man from the day before, his tattered coat still draped over his shoulders, but he moved hesitantly, as if unsure whether yesterday's kindness would still be allowed to exist today. Lena saw him first. For a brief moment, uncertainty crossed her face, a flicker of doubt, wondering what the new rules were, whether compassion was still welcome or if it would be punished again. Leon gave her a slight nod, a quiet but powerful signal. Kindness is still the right thing. Lena understood instantly. This time, she didn't have to reach into her own pocket. Everything had already been taken care of. Leon had implemented a new policy, one rooted in empathy and dignity. For moments like this, the man had no idea that within just 24 hours, the entire system had shifted. But he felt something, in the way the cashier smiled, in the way no one looked at him with judgment. He sat at a corner table, gently cradling the warm meal in his hands as if holding the last piece of his dignity. Leon watched from a distance. A quiet sense of fulfillment bloomed in his chest. This, he thought, is what leadership is supposed to be, not barking orders from a distance, but stepping in, understanding, and reshaping the world from the inside. The afternoon rolled on with a peaceful rhythm. Gone was the frantic chaos, the shouting, the cold stares. Employees were no longer racing to survive the shift. They were working with breath, with space, with purpose. Lena continued to grow into her role, effortlessly leading without intimidation or force. She didn't need to yell, she just gave a look, a nod, and the team responded. Cal, who used to seem overwhelmed, now moved in sync with the kitchen crew. The weight in his shoulders had lifted. Leon remained in the background, watching. The store was no longer ruled by fear or fatigue. Conversations felt lighter. Laughter slipped in between orders, and employees began working not out of obligation, but because they believed in what they were doing. A customer came up with a question about their order. Lena explained the situation. Twice. Without losing patience, Leon saw it clearly now. She was going to make an incredible manager. There was no doubt left. The door opened again. A man stepped inside, his presence calm, composed. His polo shirt was crisp, the company logo neatly embroidered on the chest. Leon recognized him instantly. Isaiah Carter, the regional supervisor who had oversight of this location, at least on paper. "Didn't expect to see you here," Isaiah said, voice neutral but laced with curiosity. Leon gestured toward the counter, where Lena was expertly handling a customer. "I figured it was time to see it for myself." Isaiah followed Leon's gaze. "She's always had potential," he admitted. "Greg just never saw it." Leon didn't react. Greg missed a lot of things. Isaiah let out a quiet sigh, a subtle way of admitting his oversight without needing to say it aloud. "You acted fast." "I had to," Leon replied. "So what's the next step?" Leon didn't hesitate. Increased staffing, proper training, and making sure management actually supports their teams, not tears them down. Isaiah gave a slight nod. "This isn't how I've seen most executives operate." "That's the problem," Leon said. "We've been looking down from too far above for too long. It's time we looked closer, looked with them." Just then, the front door opened and a woman entered with sharp eyes and a firm stride. Her expression was all business as she marched straight to the counter. "I need to speak to whoever's in charge," she said, voice clipped with frustration. Leon stepped forward. "That would be me." But she didn't give him time to explain. "I came here last week. The service was awful. I waited forever in the drive-thru. My order was completely wrong, and when I asked for a manager, I got brushed off. Leon stayed silent, letting her speak. When she paused, he nodded. You're right. That shouldn't have happened. He turned slightly, gesturing toward the team behind him. The people here today weren't the problem. They were working under someone who never should have been in charge. Her stern expression faltered slightly, confusion edging into the corners of her eyes. We've made changes, Leon continued. The person who ignored your concerns is no longer with us, and this team is finally getting the support they should have had from the beginning. The woman studied him, watching closely, as if trying to catch a flicker of insincerity. And I'm just supposed to believe that? Leon turned to Lena. She's the one in charge now. If anything goes wrong, she's the one to talk to. Lena stepped forward. Her expression was calm, her eyes steady. I want things done right, she said. If there's ever an issue again, come straight to me. The woman slowly let her arms drop to her sides. All right, I'll give it another shot. Isaiah exhaled beside Leon, voice low. You rebuilding this from the ground up? Leon didn't take his eyes off Lena. It's the only way to fix it. Isaiah didn't argue. The afternoon passed, and with every passing minute, Leon's belief was reaffirmed. Real change isn't just about removing what's broken. It's about nurturing what's right. Lena was no longer the timid girl getting reprimanded behind a register. She was a leader now, voice clear, posture strong, her earlier hesitation gone without a trace. Leon took a few steps back. He didn't need to lead anymore. It was time for someone like her to write the next chapter. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Moments of Quiet Truth, where small moments carry the power to awaken conscience, compassion, and the courage to do what's right.